Welcome to IP Concerns Deep Dive, the podcast version of our IP Concerns blog from Cascade Law Group. Here, we unpack intellectual property-related, real business and brand protection topics in a way that actually makes sense, no legal experience required.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is February 18, 2026. And if you have been anywhere near a corporate lobby or a university campus this month, you have seen the banners. It is Women Inventors Month.
Which, usually means a lot of repasting the same 3 photos of Marie Curie on social media and then calling it a day.
Right, and that is exactly what we are not doing today. We're taking a stack of reports, some historical analyses, and this really compelling article titled Architects of Change. And we're trying to do something a little different.
Yeah.
We want to figure out why the history of innovation looks the way it does.
It's less about, here's a list of cool things women made and more of a forensic investigation. We're looking at the architects of change, sure, but we're also looking at the architecture of erasure.
The architecture of erasure, I like that.
Why do we know the invention, but half the time we don't know the inventor?
And we have some genuinely strange connections to map out today. We are going to draw a straight line from a Hollywood sex symbol to the Wi-Fi on your phone.
Which is an amazing story.
And we're going to look at how a missile engineer ended up on the patent for the world's most famous doll.
And we're going to talk about the patent gap. Because this isn't just history, it is a huge economic issue happening right now in 2026 that is arguably costing the global economy trillions in lost productivity.
So let's start with the landscape. The source material makes a bold claim right off the bat. It says if you removed women inventors from the timeline, modern life effectively collapses. That feels like hyperbole, doesn't it?
It sounds like it, I know. Until you actually start auditing the technology around you. If you scrubbed women from the patent record, you aren't just losing niche products. You are losing, the fundamental safety nets of modern society.
Okay, let's get specific then. Give me the deep dive version of that. Not just the names, but the structural impact.
Okay, so take Stephanie Kwolek. Most people, if they know the name, they associate it with Kevlar. But the science there is the real story. She wasn't even trying to make a bulletproof vest. No. She was at DuPont in the 60s trying to make a lightweight fiber for tires because they thought a gasoline shortage was coming.
So she was looking for better gas mileage, not body armor.
Exactly. And she was working with these cloudy, thin polymer solutions that everyone else in the lab would have just thrown away.
Why? What was wrong with them?
Well, usually when you're making nylon, you want this clear, thick syrup. She had this bad batch. It was cloudy and runny, but she had a hunch. She decided to spin it anyway.
And that's the moment of discovery.
That is the moment. When she spun it, the molecules all aligned perfectly in parallel. Think of it like raw spaghetti in a box instead of cooked spaghetti in a bowl.
And that alignment is where the strength comes from.
Because they were so perfectly aligned, the bond was incredibly stiff, 5 times stronger than steel by weight. That isn't just better thread. That is a material science revolution.
Wow.
It changed how we build bridges, how we protect police officers, how we reinforce tires, even how we build fiber optic cables.
Yeah.
It's ubiquitous structural integrity.
It's interesting because Kwolek is operating at the absolute bleeding edge of chemistry. But then the source pivots to Dr. Patricia Bath. And we're moving into, high-end physics.
Right. Laser Foucault.
Which I have to say sounds like a weapon from a space opera.
It really does.
Yeah.
But before Dr. Bath, cataract surgery was incredibly mechanical. It was invasive. You were essentially using a tiny mechanical grinder to remove the lens.
Oh.
Dr. Bath figured out how to use a laser to basically vaporize the cataract.
So it's the difference between using a jackhammer and a scalpel.
Or a jackhammer and a beam of light. I mean, she didn't just improve a surgery. She restored sight to people who had been written off as permanently blind because the old method was just too risky for them.
So we have molecular chemistry, we have laser physics, but then the article moves to things that are so mundane we don't even think of them as technology.
The invisible tech. Yeah.
Windshield wipers.
Yeah.
Mary Anderson, 1903. I was driving here today in the rain, and it actually occurred to me, before that, what did people do? Just accept that they couldn't see.
Literally, yes. They would open the front pane of the window, the split windshields, and just get soaked. Or they would have to stop the car, get out, and physically wipe it off.
That's crazy.
Anderson saw this on a streetcar in New York and thought, that is just inefficient. She invented the spring-loaded arm with a rubber blade.
And the auto industry loved it immediately, I assume.
Not even close. They told her it was a distraction. They said drivers would be, like, mesmerized by the movement and crash their cars.
That's a recurring theme in these documents, isn't it? The invention works perfectly, but the institution just rejects it.
Which brings us straight to the home security system. Marie Van Britten Brown. 1960s, Queens, New York. She basically creates the great-grandmother of the Ring doorbell. CCTV, two-way microphone, remote lock release.
All because the police response times in her neighborhood were too slow?
Exactly. She was solving a failure of public infrastructure with her own private innovation.
So we've established the contributions are massive, from molecular chemistry all the way to home safety. But this is where the deep dive gets tricky. We need to talk about the credit, because the sources talk about a gap of recognition.
It's more of a chasm than a gap, really.
And the notes bring up the Barbie doll. I have to admit, I thought I knew this story. Ruth Handler creates Barbie, names it after her daughter, builds a massive empire. Where's the controversy?
The controversy is in the paperwork. You have to separate the brand from the patent. Ruth Handler was absolutely the visionary. She saw the hole in the market for an adult-bodied doll. She was the entrepreneur who forced Mattel to make it. But if you go look up U.S. patent 3,005,304, filed in 1959.
Ruth's name isn't there.
No, the name on the patent is Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan, wasn't he?
Yeah.
A missile engineer?
He came from Raytheon. He worked on the Sparrow and the Hawk missiles. Mattel hired him for his knowledge of mechanics and materials. He's the one who designed the complex waist joint, the internal tension system that allowed Barbie to pose.
So technically, he invented the mechanism.
In the eyes of the patent office, yes. And this is such a crucial distinction for you listening right now. Patents protect how something works, not the cultural idea behind it. Because of how the laws were written and the corporate structure at the time, the mother of Barbie is completely invisible on the founding legal document of her product.
It feels like a technicality, but it really matters. It changes who history records as the inventor versus, I don't know, the marketer.
And it gets darker. Jack Ryan later became very famous for his lifestyle. He married Zsa Gabor, had these huge parties, all fueled in part by the royalties and credit he got for being the quote-unquote inventor of Barbie.
While Ruth was the one fighting for the doll's very existence in the boardroom.
That distinction between the person holding the patent and the person with the vision, it seems to be a trap that women fall into again and again in these stories.
It's a difference between soft power and hard assets. Well, if we're talking about hard assets and missile engineers, we have to talk about the centerpiece of this article. This is the story that always it blows people's minds. Hedy Lamarr.
The most beautiful woman in the world.
Right. Starring in Samson and Delilah, the face of 1940s Hollywood glamour. But the source material says we need to think of her as a cryptographic pioneer first and an actress second.
100%. In 1942, she's sitting in Hollywood reading the war news, and she knows that Allied torpedoes have a big problem. They're radio-controlled.
Which means they need a constant signal from the ship to the torpedo to tell it where to go.
Right, and the Nazis figured out that if you just blast noise on that one single frequency, you can jam the signal. The torpedo just goes dead in the water.
So Lamarr, who has no formal engineering degree, she comes up with a solution that is... honestly, it's brilliant in its simplicity.
Frequency hopping.
Walk us through the mechanism. How do you stop the jamming?
Okay, imagine you and I are trying to talk on walkie-talkies. If we stay on channel 1, the enemy just listens to channel 1 and blocks us. But what if we agreed ahead of time that every single second we're going to switch channels? We go from channel 1 to 5 to 80 to 12.
And as long as we both know the order of the jumps, we can keep talking.
And the enemy just hears little bits of static because they can't possibly predict where we're going next.
Okay, but this is 1942. You can't put a microchip in a torpedo. How did they physically make the torpedo switch channels at the exact same time as the ship?
This is my favorite part of the whole story. She worked with a guy named George Antheil, who was an avant-garde composer. They used the mechanism of a player piano.
Wait, a player piano, like the paper rolls with little holes punched in them?
Exactly like that. They designed a miniaturized player piano mechanism to go inside the torpedo. A roll of paper would spin, and the holes would trigger the frequency changes. It would synchronize with an identical roll on the ship. 88 frequencies.
Because there are 88 keys on a piano.
It's poetic, isn't it?
It's genius. So they take this to the U.S. Navy. You have a Hollywood star and a composer handing them a jam-proof torpedo guidance system. What happens?
The Navy basically laughs them out of the room. They literally told her she could help the war effort more by selling war bonds and kissing soldiers at the USO.
Oh, come on.
I'm serious. They seized the patent as alien property because she was Austrian. They classified it top secret, and then they just shoved it in a file cabinet.
So they just sat on a game-changing military technology because of who invented it.
For 20 years. It was never used in World War II. It wasn't deployed until the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. By then, the patent had expired. Hedy Lamarr never made a single dime from it.
But the technology itself, the idea, it didn't die.
Oh no, that concept, they call it spread spectrum technology, is the literal bedrock of everything we use today. If you're listening to this on Bluetooth headphones, that's frequency hopping, your Wi-Fi router, frequency hopping, GPS. Same exact principle.
So Hedy Lamarr is arguably the architect of the entire modern wireless world.
And for decades, she was just known as that pretty lady from the movies. It wasn't until the late 90s, right before she died, that the Electronic Frontier Foundation finally gave her an award for it.
I read her quote when they finally called her about the award. She just said, "It's about time."
She knew. She always knew what she had done.
So this brings us to the deep dive question for 2026. We look back at the Navy rejecting Hedy Lamarr and we think, wow, how sexist, how backward. But the source article, the section titled The Modern Gap, suggests we aren't really doing much better today.
Well, the overt sexism is gone. No one is telling women to go sell war bonds instead of coding. But the data is just, it's stubborn. In 2026, women still account for a disproportionately small percentage of patent holders.
Is that just a pipeline issue? I mean, are there just fewer women in engineering to begin with?
That's the lazy answer, and the research shows it's wrong. Even when you control for the number of women in STEM fields, they still file fewer patents than their male colleagues. The gap isn't about capability, it's about the ecosystem of commercialization.
Okay, explain that. What is stopping the filing?
It comes down to what the report calls the 3 C's: capital, connections, and confidence in the system.
Let's break those down. Capital.
Patents are expensive. We aren't just talking about the filing fee with the government. You need a good patent attorney. You need to defend the claims. It can run you tens of thousands of dollars before you ever sell a single product.
And the data shows women-led startups get far less venture capital.
Significantly less. So less money means fewer patents. It's a vicious cycle. Investors want to see a patent before they invest, but you need that investment to even get the patent in the first place.
Okay, so that's capital. What about connections?
So many men in tech have mentors who see their work and say, hey, that algorithm you wrote, we should patent that. Women are often socialized to just view their work as, well, doing the job. They aren't nudged toward the IP office in the same way.
And the article mentions something really interesting about intellectual property literacy.
Yes. We teach girls to code. We teach them engineering. We almost never teach them law. If you don't understand that your idea is an asset class, something that can be owned, sold, and licensed, you're not going to protect it.
And that's a key takeaway for you, the listener. IP isn't just paperwork. It's the difference between having a job and having actual wealth.
Precisely. If Hedy Lamarr had kept control of her patent and the Navy had licensed it, she would have been one of the wealthiest people on Earth. Patents are the vehicle for intergenerational wealth and technology. If women are shut out of that system, they're shut out of the big exit.
So, looking at the call to action in the source material, what's the fix? It's 2026. What are the architects of change asking for?
It's about moving beyond just awareness. We don't need more posters. We need institutional shifts. Venture capital firms need to actively audit their own bias. Universities need to have tech transfer offices that don't just wait for people to come to them, but actively scout female researchers and say, let's patent this work.
And for the listeners, whether they're inventors themselves or just people working in these industries, what should they be looking for?
Look for the gap. If you are in a meeting and a woman proposes a new solution, be the one to ask the question. Is this patentable? Do we own this? Be the mentor that Jack Ryan had at Mattel, but that Hedy Lamarr never had with the Navy.
It's about recognizing that innovation doesn't look one specific way. It doesn't always wear a lab coat. Sometimes it wears a sequin dress. Sometimes it's a nun or a secretary.
And when we ignore those sources of innovation, we are the ones who lose. That's the bottom line. It's just a bad math to ignore 50% of the brains on the planet.
We have covered a lot of ground today, from the bulletproof fibers of Stephanie Kwolek to the hidden history of Barbie and the frequency-hopping genius of Hedy Lamarr.
It is a heavy history, but it's also a really inspiring one.
It is. And I want to leave everyone with a final thought to chew on. We talked about that 20-year delay on what became Wi-Fi. The world waited 2 decades for a technology that defined the 21st century, simply because the military couldn't see past the inventor's gender.
It's a chilling thought.
So here's the question. What is sitting in a notebook right now, today, in 2026? What cure, what energy solution, what technological breakthrough is just gathering dust because the person who invented it doesn't have the funding or the connections or simply doesn't look the part?
And maybe more importantly, what can we do to make sure we don't wait another 20 years to find it?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Stay curious.